Thank you, Tracy and Nick. From the last post about bicycles and buses, there's some more comments there. You know, that you can't get as many people on a bike. The bus is like training, the bike is like one-to-one coaching. Yeah, definitely that could be the case, but we would argue you need to create learning events, even if they're face-to-face training events, that are focused at the individual experience, not necessarily the collective experience. Now, how you do that is quite difficult, but if you start to think about it as a concept, then you start to work out ways of how you do that, even if you're all in one classroom at the same time. And what else here? Tracy, you said bikers individual need to be actively alert and manage your own journey. Yeah, you can't fall asleep on a bike like you can on a bus. So the more bike-like you make your learning, the harder it is to disengage with it. Yeah. Now let's come to this question. Thinking about, how do we create challenging journeys? There's lots of ways we can do this, actually, folks. Here's an idea here: video where you select a journey and outcomes through different scenarios. So, that sounds clever, where you're actually interrupting the flow of the video and actually asking people to make some decisions about where that goes. So there's some kind of hierarchy of family tree of video or something that they choose their own path down. That may be a good idea. I don't know if there were other ideas that were talked about, but maybe design in failure. That would be challenging, wouldn't it? To actually create events or activities within your learning solution that are impossible, that get people to a point of frustration even, before you rebuild that and refocus it. How about planning in interruptions? We're so used to very comfortable environments when we create learning environments that are safe and soft and warm and friendly. What would happen if we actually started to upset that a little bit? Well, we find it engages people. When you suddenly interrupt a flow of thought and you plan in a diversion, you take it to a different environment, you create a different environment within the room somehow. You switch all the chairs around and face the opposite direction. There's lots of little ways you can start thinking about how do I create a challenge, something that's awkward. And, actually, if you think about it, some of you don't have Twitter. No, I don't do Twitter. No, can't do Twitter. There's that's a discomfort journey. If I say, get on your phones, get on Twitter. And there's that sense in which even that, for some, is a sense of challenge that you want to introduce into the learning. Now, we haven't got long, so we're going to move on. How do we then take some of that idea, the challenge idea, and then I said we want to create environments that challenge people to think and to act. So the challenge piece we talked about, the think piece, we have come up with a structure that works like this. We reckon there's 4 stages to this. Really, the 4th stage is about the act. How do you get people to do something different? But the think piece, we've got to take people through an awareness from unconscious incompetence to recognizing some of the subtlety of maybe what we're covering or dealing with, opening the topic up. We then actually, now this is the difficult thing and the key thing in bringing about change, we've got to create desire. It's no good people just having content and knowledge to do something. The way we get people to change is actually to tap into a desire to do something different when I walk away from that desktop or that workshop or whatever it might be. That's going to be at the heart of creating solutions that get people changing for good. Then it's ability. We often do that. I mean, we used to ability stuff in L&D, how we do things. This is the technique, this is the model, this is the soft skill, this is the approach. We do lots of that ability stuff. And then when we come on to the act piece, I'm going to talk a bit more about duplication. The idea that we've actually got to move from that practice gap. So many people know so much, but they don't put it into practice. So we've got to move into that whole area. But let's focus on the think piece just for a moment. And if we go back to my learning to drive scenario, and if I draw a line around here somewhere, do you remember? So I think I can drive, unconscious incompetence, I can't. I recognize I can't drive down here, and I pass my test over here, but it's a very conscious experience. This kind of line somewhere in here is about as far as we can get learning to take people. Now, if you get somebody to do a conscious competence level, that's a pretty good piece of learning. They've taken that on board, that they recognize they can do it, but they've got to think about it as they do it. So overlay our awareness, desire, ability, at least the adder part of it, And you've got exactly this. What you're doing is you are dealing with awareness as you bring people down that discomfort level. Oh, this is more difficult than I thought. This is more detailed. I didn't expect that. Oh, crumbs, this is a lot to this. And then you've got to work on the 17-year-old wanting to drive. Now, what's going to take that learner to the point in which they go, I want to do something about this. I recognise there's a need to do something about this. I recognise if I change, then this will be for my better or for my organisation's better. So creating desire, really key piece, and then we're into the ability bit. I think we do this. I think we know ability. We cover that so much. We've been doing it for years and years, teaching the content. So let's do the Twitter thing again. Just 1 minute this time. I'm really going to keep you on your toes, okay, to think through how do you, sorry, I've gone one too far there. How do you create desire? What's going on here? Let me see if that worked. That's what I wanted to do. So let's just focus on this, because this is probably the hardest part of that switch. How do you create desire to change within the learning process? So again, quick conversation, tweet your answers at iManage in the Twitter feed, and we'll just share some of that and move on to the last piece about how we bring action about. So quick discussion, quick tweet. Okay, let's just share what we've got. Thank you, Sarah. Interesting chat about challenging learners. She said it's quite nice of Sarah's, but thank you very much for that. Now, Nick said, understanding the needs of the delegate and tailor training to benefit that need. Amanda's just said, understand personal motivation and personalised learning activities to engage people. Yeah. So these ideas are at the heart of what we've got to do here. Go back to part 1 on YouTube with us, where I talk about how you do the training needs analysis to do that. But we have to get to the point in which we are addressing the desire at a level of how does it apply to me? It's got to be individual. We've got to take our learner community and ask the question, what would outstanding performance look like? If in 6 months' time, this training or learning experience changed your world, how would that be different? Why would that be different? What's caused that? It's a great future-proof it. Go forward and ask the learners, now what do you want it to be like in 6 months' time? We've got to get close to what's in it for them, the WIFM idea, haven't we? If we're going to create learning that changes people, there's no compromise here in our book. You cannot just design training and stuff it out. You have to, if you want people to change, you have to get under the skin of what change is going to benefit them to a level that they will have a desire to do something about it. So you really have to address their challenges, their opportunities, their problems, and really think through a deeper level as to how you really codify that and turn that into learning that they will desire. Go back and look at the first YouTube video, because there's a model we use for that. We use every week that really helps us get under the skin of that. The model's called SKIN, S-C-I-N. I know it's spelt wrong, but there you go. Have a look at that. So we've got no time, so let's just finish this off. So if the learning journey, the training, the e-learning, the solution will take us to conscious competence, where we're thinking about it, what takes us to unconscious competence, where we do this instinctively and is now our new norm, our normal behaviour? It has to be through duplication. It has to be through putting something into place, acting. So creating environments that challenge people to think and to act. If we don't translate into action, it's worthless. It's worthless. It's a waste of training budget, and we say, we don't pay us if nobody changes. So if we'd got time, which we haven't, I'd get into a Twitter feed and a discussion about how do we engender that action in people. But just think about that for a moment. There's lots of ways you can do it. Yes, reminders will be a part of it. Popping stuff back into people's minds just as they're beginning to forget it again. So finding some way of sort of popping that content back so it's front of mind, not bottom of drawer, is going to be critical in the transition from head knowledge conscious competence to practice and delivery unconscious competence. So there's a perfect timing for that as well. The science is there. There's a perfect timing of when you pop it back into people's brains. And that is just when they're forgetting again. And the more you do that, the longer the gaps get. But you can research it. It's out there. You know, there's scientific proof of what that timing ought to be if you're going to pop it back in people's brains. You have to do other things, though. It's not just about reminders, is it? Because that's not action. So you have to start getting creative about, you know, how do we get people out in the workplace trying stuff? So we use an idea called workouts, where we actually go back to the learners and challenge them in their workplace to actually work on the topic, to think about how they're applying it, to feedback, you know, what's worked, what might they do differently again if they try it again and build on the success or failure of that experience and iterate that and try it again. We might, at this point, being an organisation that focuses on social learning as well as face-to-face, you would potentially back this up with a social learning element. And there's lots of ways you can do that. It can be, action learning sets could be an example of that, but you can do other things as well. You can involve managers in that cycle, so that you get the managers involved in the learning outcomes and the change of behaviour with the individuals. And you might use a platform. We've got thisworkwell.com, which is a social learning platform that helps people to share what's working well, so that other people can try that and learn off that and say whether it's worked for them or not. And you start to build a pattern of the good behaviour in organisations, which managers can also have the discussion at around appraisal or review time. So it's not just about the formal learning that's going on, it's actually the action, the behaviours that people are carrying out while they're back in the workplace. So this isn't easy. This is the tough end of it, bringing about the action. But if you just leave it to a wing and a prayer, and don't plan for it, then there's a fair chance that it won't occur. So you have to work it into your solution design as you approach the whole package. So we haven't got time to do Twitter again. I'm out of time. I'm over time by 5 minutes already. So there we go. Changing people for good. Think through that idea of challenge, think, act. Think about that model, awareness, desire, ability, duplication. Throw that into the design mix when you're designing learning solutions, and you'll nudge another step forward to creating environments where people will actually act differently and take that learning on board and bridge that practice gap. So thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for listening. We are just down here. Do connect with us. We're on every media feasible. 439's the stand. Love to continue that conversation with you. Thank you very much.